Okay, in this demonstration, we're going to move from where we were with the HTML and our template, and we are going to start implementing some style sheets. So what you're going to do in this is you're going to create the CSS style sheets reset.css as well as your styles.css. Okay, reset. What is a reset style sheet? Well, because browsers apply browser default styles to many unstyled HTML tags, we need to undo those styles by immediately removing or resetting them to avoid conflicts later in our custom styles. Example, things like an unordered list will, by default, in a browser style sheet, have approximately 20 to 40 pixels of padding on the left side. Well, unless you reset that from the very beginning, you're going to be fighting with that later, especially whenever you do things like left floats and stuff. Also, if you want to read more about this, down here at the bottom at cssreset.com/what is a CSS reset with dashes in between, you can read that on the screen. You can click on that and it'll explain everything about the reset style sheets that you can download. Now you can download a reset by going to the cssreset.com website. So let's actually do that real quick. You can actually either type this in a browser or you can open the browser up and go to a Google page here, and you can type in CSS reset and do a search. And number 2 hit that I always get on Google is this one where it says 2013's most common resets. I like this website, and the very top one is one of the most recent ones, and Eric Myers is kind of the guy who first invented the idea of the reset. So if you click on get the code, it drops this down and you can click on one of these buttons down here, either minified or full. What is minified? What is full? Minified is basically the same thing as full, but all of the line breaks and spaces are taken out. So it's just loads a little bit faster. If you want to be able to see what's going on, this is what's going on inside of it. This is the full version. See, what it does is it goes ahead and it basically undoes everything that a browser will do to your page. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to download the minified. So it copied it for me, and now I can go into my Komodo and I can go ahead and make a new file. I'm going to say new from template, and we're going to choose CSS, and I'm going to paste all of that minified code here, and I'm going to save that. I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to save this directly into my exercise 4 CSS folder, and I'm going to call it reset.css. Okay, and now that that's saved, I can close it, and now I just need to link to that, and that's going to be the first thing that I want to go ahead and use in my head up here. Is I'm going to go ahead and create the link. Okay, so it's a link tag, and then what you want to do is you want to say href equals, and then we're going to put the hyperreference to that file. So that file exists inside of css/reset.css, and if you're curious and you don't remember for sure, you can look over here in your left panel inside exercise 4. You'll see that this is where my index file is, so that means it's in the same directory as the CSS file, or excuse me, the CSS folder. So that means I just need to say, okay, go to CSS folder /reset.css, and that's what I've done here. Okay, so inside of that, I've got link, href equals, and then the address to it. And then I also need to tell it what the relationship is, and we're going to tell it that's a style sheet. And then finally, we're going to say what type it is, and the type is going to be like text.css/CSS. Okay, so that it knows what type of file it is whenever it goes to read it. Now that's going to load that reset, and if I hit save now, and we decide that we want to go and look at that and preview that file, let's go ahead here and we'll look at it in Chrome. And you see what it did is it collapsed all the margins Before we actually had some things that looked like headings and subheadings and things like that, and now it just looks like a bunch of text. There's no visual styling whatsoever, but that's fine because we want to be able to style it the way we want it to be. We don't want to have to work off of existing styles and have to fight it the whole time, okay? So using a reset when you're doing a full-on website is a really good idea, and you should always load it from the very beginning before you start to write your own styles so that you don't end up having to redo all of your own styles later. Okay, so let's close these. Okay, I'm going to get that to go away. All right, so that was my reset file. But now what I need to do is I need to add a new style sheet of my own with my own personal styles in here. And I'm going to call that styles.css. You can do the same thing. And so what it says here is you're going to create the new styles.css. You're going to save it inside of that same CSS folder that's in your exercise 4 folder. And then you're going to do what we just did, so create the HTML link. And then after that, we're going to need to decide on some fonts. And we're going to look to Google Fonts, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, so let's go back to Komodo, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say File, New from Template. And again, it's going to be CSS. Now, before I just hit Open, but what I can also do is I can define, right here, I can define the file name, so that it'll do this for me and I don't have to do a save as, and I just have to make sure that I put it in the correct directory. And so I know that it goes in /CSS. You could have also gone and looked where it says local. You could have gone and looked for it. So if I click on that, it'll actually go and look in my project folder. So we're going to look in CSS, and that's where we're going to save it. And we're going to say open. And then now you see that it creates this style sheet with the name styles. And so, okay, there's that. Now, to get started with this, before we even create any styles, let's go into our index HTML page, and we need to do what we just did with the reset. Well, we need to do that with the new style sheet that we just made. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just copy and paste. Then instead of reset, we're going to actually type styles.css. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to show you really quickly is that we have, I'm going to save this, we have our index file and then we have our empty style sheet. Well, one thing that's kind of nice is to be able to look at them side by side. So if you want to toggle your drawer, your left drawer closed, what you can do is click on the one that's on the right. In my case, it's styles. I prefer to look at mine so that the HTML is on the left and that the style sheet's on the right, just my own preference. I'm going to go up to view and I'm going to say move to split view, not split view, but move to split view. And then I can see them side by side as I'm typing, which is pretty nice. I got rid of my mini map also. I don't know if you noticed that, but I didn't want to have to look at a mini map on my HTML page. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and start creating my styles on the left, or excuse me, on the right side. One of the first things that I like to do is I like to comment my CSS very well because it gets really confusing really fast. If you don't comment your stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and start off a general section. And I like to do mine sort of like this. So I'll say general, I'll call it baseline styles or something like that. Look, this is showing my mini map. So I'm going to hide my mini map. I don't care about it right now. And we're going to do something like this. And okay, so now we've got our general baseline styles, all right? And that would be stuff like, for instance, the body. And some of the kinds of things that you might set in the body, for instance, would be things that are related to fonts and so forth. So let's go ahead before we do anything, and we're going to set the font size to be 100%. And the reason is that I want it to start out at exactly the correct size that the browser is able to do it at its normal 100% size. That's just a general rule of thumb. That's a good thing to do. Now, the next thing that we would probably do is tell it what font we want to use. Well, we haven't actually looked for fonts, and as we've discussed before, you can't just use any font that's on your computer because other people might not have it. So we have to use web fonts. So what I'm going to show you how to do then is, if you haven't already figured out how to do this, is we're going to go to web browser and we're going to open a new window. and go to Google Fonts. I'm going to do a search real quick, and it's the first hit. And you can search through all your fonts here, and you can adjust them by, thickness, slant, width, and so forth. You can spend tons of time looking through this, but I know the one that I'm going to look for. You can just take as much time as you want looking for it, but I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to use Railway, and what I'll do here is I'll say Add to Collection, and I'm not using Rail Dots, I'm using Railway, and underneath review, it shows you kind of what different things look like. You can look at them in paragraph view, you can look at it in headline view, and so forth. You can look at the different styles that come, or the different weights, that come with these. And I tend to like to pick fonts that have lots of different styles, so that you have a lot of different options. But that, of course, doesn't mean that I'm going to use all those styles, because that will affect your page load time significantly. Anyway, so I'm going to go over here where it says Use, and I kind of tend to like, I know what I want to use right now. I'm going to use an option for semi-bold, I'm going to use an option for normal, and an option for light. See what it's doing to the page load every time I add one of these things, though? So I have to really think pretty seriously if I really need to use all of these, and I'm not sure that I do. So I can probably get rid of the light, and that helps a little bit, but I definitely want at least 2 of them. Okay, so if I check off those and I go down here below, this is what I need to put into my HTML. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go back to my file here. I need to put this before my actual style sheet where I'm going to call it out. So I need to put it before this style sheet. The order in which I do these is pretty important. What's really useful is that you should always have your reset before anything, so it'll reset everything. And then after reset, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put the link that I just copied from Google. And here, let's just move out of split view so that I can see this really well. Okay, and you can see that I've got my reference for Google fonts, all right, and then after that comes my regular style sheet, because my regular style sheet is going to reference the fonts that are here. If I try to reference those fonts ahead of this line, like if I tried to put line 8 on line 6 or something, then I would have a problem, because it would call for a font that hadn't been loaded into the page yet. Okay, so let's move back to split view. All right. So now that I've got that there, I can go ahead and I can tell it what font family to use. Well, if you go back to Google's page, you see here it's got font family and it says Railway Serif. I'm just going to copy that for right now. We're going to do something a little bit more intricate. And I can paste that there. And now at least I know that it's using this Railway. So I'm going to hit save. And then we can just really quickly test it. And actually, let's save this too. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's test it in our browser. And you see, at least now, it's actually loading a different font. It doesn't look like that regular Arial anymore. Okay, so that's good. Now, the other thing too that is happening is that I'm not telling it a font weight. I want it to be a font weight 400. Oops. That's what I want the default to be. I only want headings and things like that to be the weight of 600, okay? So I only have 2 weights that are options. I have 400 and I have 600. Well, I'm going to show you how to do font shorthand, okay? So instead of doing like this font family specifically, then I can also do something, excuse me, called font, where I can put a bunch of different characteristics of the font together. Now, sometimes it does matter what order you put it in. So if you want to reference, one of the things that you can do is you can go, I'll just open up this page real quick. If you go to css-tricks.com and you type in the search bar font shorthand, you're going to get this page. And this tells you really quickly basic syntax. So the first thing that you could put there is font style, then font variant, then font weight, and so forth. You don't have to put all of these things, but it gives you an idea of the things that are allowed in the font shorthand, okay? So we could combine the font weight, and we could combine the font size, line height, and the font family into one rule. So let's look at doing that.